I never thought a lake house could tear a family apart, but here we are. I'm Hunter, 34 years old, and the kind of guy who's always tried to keep the peace in the family. I'm not the loud one, not the confrontational one, not the one who shows up to Thanksgiving ready to argue politics or drag up childhood grievances. That's more my sister's style. Me? I've always been the just let it go type. Quiet, helpful, probably too forgiving for my own good. Or at least, I used to be. The lake house was never supposed to be mine, not really. It was just the thing we all loved. Tucked into the edge of a quiet little town in Michigan, wrapped in pine trees and sitting right on the water's edge, it had been in the family since before I was born. My grandparents built it with their own hands in the 60s. I remember summers there like a movie, fishing with Grandpa, burning marshmallows to ash over the fire pit, my mom laughing as she chased me and my sister through the woods behind it. Back then, it felt like a magical place. A place outside of time. Untouchable. When my grandparents passed, they left the lake house to my mom. She was the only child, so there wasn't any dispute. And my mom, well, she loved that place. Or at least, she used to. After Dad died 6 years ago, she stopped going as much. The house reminded her of him, I think. I offered to keep it up, mow the lawn, fix the deck, clear out the gutters. It became a little project for me. Every other weekend, I drive up, sometimes with my girlfriend, sometimes alone, and take care of things. Not because anyone asked me to, just because I wanted to see it alive. Because it mattered to me. My sister, on the other hand, hadn't been up there in years. Her name's Danielle. She's 2 years younger than me and has always had a, let's say, commanding presence. Grew up with her foot on the gas, voice raised a few notches above everyone else's. She married young, had 2 kids by 28, and now lives in the suburbs with her husband Ryan and their picture-perfect family of 4. To her credit, she's a good mom. But she's also loud, dramatic, and if I'm being honest, entitled as all hell. We were close as kids, at least until high school, but somewhere along the way, that changed. It became more about comparisons. Who got what for Christmas? Who had it harder? Who deserved more? Danielle always knew how to twist things to her favor, and our mom? She usually let her. That's not bitterness talking. It's just fact. Danielle's always been the golden child. The one with the real family, the real responsibilities. I was just the single guy with a remote job and no kids. Disposable in some ways. At least, that's how they made me feel. It all started unraveling last October. We were sitting at Mom's house after Sunday dinner. Just me, Mom, Danielle, and her kids. Her husband skipped. As usual. Can't say I missed him. The conversation was light, talking about fall colors, Halloween costumes, the usual. I was sipping coffee, half zoning out while the kids ran circles around the couch, when Mom casually said something that made the air leave my lungs. So, I've been thinking about putting the lake house in Danielle's name. I blinked. Wait, what? She didn't look up from her mug. The lake house. I mean, you don't have kids, Hunter. You don't even go up there that much anymore. Danielle glanced at me, then quickly looked away, feigning innocence like she hadn't heard this before. Which was a lie. I could tell by the way she fidgeted with her sleeve. She knew. I sat up straight. I go up there all the time. I've done all the maintenance for the past few years. I paid out of pocket for the new dock last spring. Mom waved her hand. Yes, I know, and I appreciate that. But it's just, Danielle's kids could really benefit from it. Summers on the lake, you know? Family memories. Like you and she had. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It wasn't just about the house. It was about erasing the time, effort, and love I'd poured into that place for years. Like none of it mattered. Like I was just a placeholder until someone with kids came along. I don't think that's fair, I said quietly. You said it would stay in the family. That you'd let us decide together when the time came. Danielle jumped in then, her voice just a little too bright. Come on, Hunter, it's not a big deal. You can still visit any time you want. It's not like we're going to sell it or something. The words hit like ice water. Not a big deal. I smiled tightly and stood up, collecting the plates. My heart was pounding, but I didn't want to start something in front of the kids. I rinsed the dishes in silence while Danielle and Mom went back to chatting like nothing had happened. That was the first moment I felt it. Not anger exactly. Not yet. Just a hollow ache. The kind that creeps into your chest when people you love treat you like an afterthought. I tried to brush it off. Maybe it was a heat of the moment thing. Maybe Mom hadn't thought it through. But that wasn't the end. A week later, she called me. Her voice was calm, almost too calm. That careful, motherly tone she used when she was about to say something deeply upsetting and wanted to disguise it as kindness. Hunter, honey, I talked to a lawyer, and there's just a few forms we'd need you to sign. Since your name is already on the deed as a co-owner, it would be cleaner if you just signed it over. Quietly. No need for a big discussion. I went still. You want me to sign over the Lakehouse to Danielle? Well, technically to me first, then I'd. No. There was a pause. Then that brittle chuckle of hers. Don't be so dramatic. I'm not cutting you out of anything. This is about the kids. About the future of the family. No. It's about you giving Danielle everything she asks for and expecting me to roll over like always. She gasped, wounded. That's not fair. Neither is what you're doing. She hung up without another word. The next week, I got an email from her. Not a call. Not a text. An email. She was uninviting me from her birthday party. Said she needed space, and that my selfish behavior had hurt the family. Danielle, she said, was shaken by my reaction. Apparently, I'd lashed out and made her feel unsafe. I stared at the screen for a long time. Unsafe. All because I wouldn't give up something I'd maintained, protected, and cared for, without ever being asked to. Just so Danielle's kids could have summer memories. That's when the ache turned into something else. Something sharp, cold, focused. I was done playing the peacekeeper. So I called someone. Not a friend. Not a sibling. Not a cousin. I called a lawyer. And when the birthday party came around, I brought a gift. And I brought him. But I'll get to that part. Because first, you need to hear what happened the day before the party, when Danielle showed up at my house uninvited, wearing sunglasses and holding a folder she claimed would change everything. I didn't even hear her pull into the driveway. I was in the garage, tinkering with an old toolbox I'd meant to sort for months. Just something to keep my hands busy, to keep my mind off everything. It had been 2 weeks since Mom's phone call and the email that followed. 2 weeks of radio silence, passive-aggressive Facebook posts about family values, and an eerie quiet that seemed more ominous than comforting. Then I heard the knock. Sharp, purposeful. The kind of knock that says, I'm not leaving until you answer. I wiped my hands on a rag and opened the door. There she was, Danielle. She had her hair up in a messy bun, oversized sunglasses that made her look like she was heading to brunch with some suburban moms, and a sleek leather folder clutched to her chest like it held state secrets. She gave me a smile I didn't trust for a second. Hey, she said in that sing-songy tone she used when she was pretending everything was fine. Got a sec. I leaned on the doorframe. Not really. What do you want? She tilted her head. Can I come in? I paused, then stepped aside. She breezed past me like she owned the place, immediately heading for the kitchen and setting the folder down on the counter like she was about to pitch me a timeshare. I shut the door quietly and followed. I figured we should talk, she said, turning toward me. You know, before Mom's party. Clear the air a bit. I crossed my arms. Sure. Let's hear it. Danielle opened the folder and slid a few pages toward me. Legal papers. Deed transfer forms. Some kind of preliminary agreement. My name was printed at the top of one of them. I had a friend of Ryan's put this together, she said, almost proud. It's just a draft, obviously. Nothing final. But it'd make things a lot smoother. Less stress for Mom. You sign it. She takes full ownership, then she transfers it to us. Clean. No drama. I stared at the papers. Then at her. Are you out of your mind? She blinked. Excuse me. You really came to my house, uninvited, with this garbage? After everything. It's not garbage, she snapped. It's a solution. You're being stubborn, Hunter. This isn't about you. Of course it isn't. It never is, right? It's about you. You and your perfect little family. Her jaw tightened. You don't have to be petty. I laughed, humorless. Petty? You want to talk about petty? You're the one who's trying to screw me out of something I've spent years taking care of. Something you haven't touched since, what, college? Danielle stepped closer, lowering her voice like we were in a courtroom whisper. Mom's not going to live forever, Hunter. She's just trying to plan ahead. She wants the Lakehouse to go to someone who will use it. Someone with a real family. I felt something break inside me right then. A thread that had been fraying for years finally snapped. I am family, I said. I may not have kids, but that house was just as much mine as it was yours. And I've been the only one keeping it from falling apart. Danielle sighed like she was exhausted from the weight of my tantrum. She closed the folder and tucked it under her arm again. Well, she said breezily, I tried. Just think about it, okay? She turned to leave, but before she reached the door, she tossed one more grenade over her shoulder. Oh, and Hunter, you should be careful about how you act at Mom's party. She's still really upset. Maybe bring a gift or something. Make peace. And then she was gone. The silence after she left was so thick it felt like I was underwater. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept replaying everything in my head. The lake house. The years I spent fixing the plumbing, patching the roof, trimming back the trees that threatened the deck after every storm. I remembered the late nights with Dad before he passed, drinking beer on the porch, listening to crickets. I remembered being 10 years old, catching my first fish on that dock. I remembered sanding and restaining the stairs by hand because I didn't trust anyone else to get it right. And now I was supposed to just give it up? Because I didn't have kids? Because I didn't fit their mold of what family looked like? No, that wasn't going to happen. A week passed. Then two. I stayed quiet. Let them stew. Let them think I was backing down. Then the party invitation arrived. Well, not to me directly. I wasn't invited, remember? But my cousin Lisa forwarded it to me. She thought it was weird that my name wasn't on the guest list, especially considering it was Mom's 60th. A big milestone. Lisa and I had always been close. She grew up around the corner from us, and she knew the family dynamics better than most. She's playing favorites again, she said over the phone. You know how she is. I did. All too well. But the thing that pushed me over the edge was a photo. Danielle posted it on Facebook. A shot of the Lakehouse porch, freshly painted. My paint. My ladder in the background. Her kids smiling on the swing set I had assembled last summer. Caption: so grateful for Mom's decision to pass this down to us. We can't wait to make memories here. The kids are already calling it their second home to hearts. I stared at the screen, so long my eyes blurred. That was it. That was the betrayal that tipped me. I picked up the phone and called James. James is my lawyer. Not a pit bull type. Not flashy or loud. But sharp as glass. I'd consulted him weeks earlier, quietly, to understand my rights. Now I was activating everything we'd prepared. We pulled records. Looked at every line of the deed. Turns out, when Dad passed, he'd made both me and Mom joint owners. Something I hadn't even realized until James dug into the fine print. A quiet gesture from a father who always saw me, even when the others didn't. That meant Mom couldn't legally sell or transfer the house without my consent, and I wasn't giving it. James helped me draft a formal cease and desist, a warning letter. Then we worked on something else, something I planned to deliver in person. The party was set for a Saturday evening, hosted at one of those overpriced banquet halls Danielle loved. Crystal chandeliers, gold-trimmed tablecloths, a chocolate fountain the size of a toddler. Everyone who mattered was going to be there. Aunts, uncles, cousins, old family friends, even neighbors who barely knew Mom. But not me. At least, not officially. I put on a suit, polished my shoes, printed something, and slipped it into a thick envelope. Then I picked up James. You ready? He asked as we pulled into the parking lot. I looked at the glowing building, the balloons, the valet. The perfect little world my mother and sister had crafted. One where I didn't exist. I straightened my tie. Let's crash a party. We walked in together. Heads turned. Conversations paused. You could feel it. The surprise, the awkward shuffle of guests who didn't know if they should say hi or pretend they didn't see me. And then I spotted her. Mom. She was at the far end of the room, standing next to Danielle, who was mid-laugh, one hand holding a champagne flute. The moment she saw me, her face froze. Danielle turned. Her eyes landed on James. Then the envelope. Her smile vanished. I started walking. Slow. Steady. Letting the silence build around me like a storm. People stepped aside. Murmurs spread. My mother's eyes flicked from me to James to the envelope, then back again. Danielle's mouth moved. Some whispered to Mom. But no one said a word to us. I stopped just a few feet from the cake table. And that's when James, bless his timing, stepped forward and cleared his throat. He reached for the mic. And just as he lifted it to speak, the room went utterly, devastatingly quiet. You could have heard a pin drop. And then he said, before we all celebrate, I believe there's something that needs to be addressed. Danielle's face turned ghost white. Mom's hand gripped her glass like it might shatter. I took a slow breath and smiled. But I'll save what happened next. Because you should hear what Danielle did after James started reading that letter. How she tried to spin everything, right there in front of 60 people. And how, in that moment, Every lie she'd ever told started unraveling. It's funny how a room full of people can go from clapping and sipping champagne to frozen in silence in under 10 seconds. When James took the mic, he didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His tone was calm, measured, almost too calm, like a surgeon explaining what he was about to do before making the first cut. I stood beside him, my hands in my pockets, watching as the cracks began to form on Danielle's carefully painted smile. "I'm here," James began, "on behalf of Hunter Callahan, who was not invited to this gathering despite being, in every legal and emotional sense, just as much a part of this family as anyone else present." A low, uncomfortable shifting swept through the guests. People glanced at one another. Someone coughed. Danielle stepped forward, her voice tight. "Hunter, this is Mom's birthday party." James held up one finger, not even looking at her. "This won't take long." That shut her up. He continued, "We're here to address a very specific matter regarding the family Lakehouse, currently jointly owned by Hunter Callahan and Margaret Callahan." He nodded toward my mother, "and recently subject to unauthorized discussions about transfer of ownership to another party without Mr. Callahan's consent." Mom's jaw clenched so hard I could hear her teeth grind. Danielle turned red, then white. I stayed still. The entire letter wasn't read out loud. James was tactful about that, but the implication was clear. He presented a summary of the cease and desist. He mentioned the clause in my father's will. He laid out, point by point, that the Lakehouse was not Mom's to give away unilaterally, and that any attempts to coerce, guilt, or manipulate me into surrendering my share would be considered legal overreach. He didn't yell. He didn't shame. He simply made it known. The game was over. When he finished, he handed the envelope to Mom. "This is for your records. We can discuss further through appropriate channels." And then he nodded at me, stepped away from the mic, and disappeared into the crowd. I didn't move for a moment. I watched as Mom clutched the envelope like it was burning her skin. Danielle muttered something to her, then turned her eyes back to me. Narrow, furious, disbelieving. "You really did this?" she hissed. "I did," I said. "And I'm not sorry. You humiliated us." "No," I replied. "You did that yourselves." I just held up a mirror. Then I walked out. It felt powerful, in the moment. But the drive home was quiet. And when I got back to my house and shut the door behind me, it all hit me at once. The weight of what I'd done, the family lines I'd crossed, the silence that would follow. I wasn't proud. Not exactly. I wasn't sure what I was. Empty, maybe. Worn out. Like I'd just survived a hurricane by holding my breath. I didn't hear from Mom for weeks. Not a call. Not a message. Not even a passive-aggressive card. Danielle, unsurprisingly, started damage control almost immediately. I heard from Lisa that she was spinning the story at every family gathering. That I'd lawyered up to bully our aging mother. That I was angry at the world because I didn't have kids. That I had always been jealous of her perfect little family. I didn't respond. Not to her. Not to anyone. I wasn't interested in fighting. I'd already made my point. But that didn't mean I wasn't hurting. The holidays came and went. I spent Thanksgiving with an old college friend, sitting on their porch with paper plates and turkey sandwiches. It wasn't sad, exactly, just quiet. Christmas was more of the same. I didn't put up a tree. Didn't buy gifts. I could have joined Lisa and her husband for their big family dinner, but I didn't want to explain myself to a dozen people who only knew Danielle's version of me. So I stayed home, read a few books, cleaned out the attic, drank a little too much wine. It was probably mid-January when I finally hit what I'd call my bottom. I was at the Lakehouse. It had snowed the night before, and the driveway was buried under 2 feet of powder. I parked at the end and trudged up with a shovel in one hand and a thermos of coffee in the other. The wind stung my cheeks, and my nose went numb within minutes. But I kept going. The place was silent. Still. No kids. No laughter. Just trees and snow and sky. I stood on the deck, staring out over the frozen lake, and for the first time in months, I let myself cry. Not loud. Not messy. Just a slow, steady release of everything I'd bottled up. The betrayal, the exhaustion, the ache of being told I didn't matter. The grief for the dad who would have stood by me. The resentment toward a mother who saw me as expendable. The weight of having to be the reasonable one all my life, only to be cast aside when it counted. When I went inside, I lit a fire and just sat there, staring at the flames, letting myself feel everything. And somewhere in the middle of that quiet, something shifted. I wasn't done. I wasn't defeated. This place, this house, wasn't just a battleground. It was a legacy. One my grandfather built. One my dad passed on. One I kept alive when everyone else moved on. It was mine, and I wasn't going to let their noise drown that out. That was the day I started rebuilding. Not the house, but myself. It wasn't dramatic. There was no movie montage. Just little things. I cleared out the guest rooms, donated the old furniture, and refinished the kitchen cabinets by hand. Took a carpentry class at the local community center, not because I needed it, but because I wanted to do it right. I started sketching out a plan to turn the Lakehouse into a part-time rental during the off-season. Something classy, quiet, thoughtful. A space for writers and artists and burned-out people like me who needed somewhere to breathe. I took better care of myself, too. Got back into shape. Cooked real meals. Cut back on the drinking. Started hiking again. Real hikes, with mud and blisters and sore legs that reminded me I was alive. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. No Instagram updates. No posts. No revenge stories. Just me in the house. Fixing each other, slowly. Then spring came. And with it, something unexpected. A letter. From Mom. It wasn't handwritten. Just a plain, typed message on standard printer paper. Hunter, I've been thinking a lot. Maybe too late. Maybe not. I won't pretend I handled things well. I thought I was doing the right thing. For the family. For the future. But I see now that I hurt you. And that I took you for granted. I don't know how to undo that. But I'd like to try. Love. Mom. There was no apology. Not directly. But I could hear it between the lines. I sat with that letter for a long time. Didn't rush to respond. Because I wasn't sure if she was reaching out for me. Or because she was realizing Danielle had backed her into a corner. A few days later, Lisa called. She's cracking, she said. Mom. Danielle. She's been furious ever since the party. Tried to guilt-trip your mom into giving her the Lakehouse again. But now Mom's realizing she can't even visit without your permission. It's sinking in. I didn't say much. But I felt it. The shift. For the first time in years, the power dynamic was different. And I hadn't screamed or begged or argued my way there. I just stood my ground. And quietly, calmly, rebuilt. But the real test came not long after that. When I got the wedding invitation. Danielle's oldest kid, my niece, Sophie, was getting married that summer. I hadn't spoken to her in almost a year. But she'd sent me a personal note with the invite. Uncle Hunter, I miss you. I don't care about the drama. I just want you there. Please. Love. Sophie. I stared at that card for a long time. Because I knew what it meant if I went. I'd see all of them again. Mom. Danielle. Ryan. Every single person who had believed the worst about me. Or at the very least, stayed silent while it happened. But Sophie had always been kind. Always looked up to me. She was a good kid, and this wasn't her fault. So I said yes. And I planned to go. But I wasn't going to show up quietly. Because by then, something had happened. Something big. Something that would flip the whole family story upside down. And I hadn't told anyone yet. Not even James. Because some gifts don't come in envelopes. Some gifts come with keys. And when I arrived at that wedding, I didn't come empty-handed. It started with a lake house and a lawyer. But by the time I began laying the groundwork for what was to come, it was no longer about property. It was about perception, about every silent moment where I was overlooked, dismissed, or smiled at politely while being told, in so many words, you don't matter. I hadn't asked for this fight, but now that it had found me, I was going to finish it on my terms. After that snow-blanketed winter where I hit bottom and slowly found my footing again, I spent spring and early summer pouring every ounce of spare energy into transforming the Lakehouse into something more than just a battleground. I didn't just want it livable. I wanted it exceptional. Not for profit. Not even for vindication. Though I'd be lying if I said that didn't linger in the back of my mind. I wanted it to stand, in every sense of the word. To reflect the quiet strength it had given me when I needed it most. I installed new flooring throughout the main level. Sanded, stained, sealed by hand. Painted the walls in cool, earthy tones. Rewired the place. Fixed the plumbing. Even replaced the old dock boards with treated cedar. I added new kitchen appliances and updated the bathroom fixtures. A friend of mine from college who'd gone into interior design offered to help me stage it, for free. She said she loved the idea of turning it into an artist retreat, or a creative space away from the noise of the world. It feels like the kind of place people go when they're lost, she said. walking barefoot across the finished hardwood, sunlight spilling across the floors. And then they leave different. I stood beside her, arms crossed, quietly taking in what it had become. Yeah, I said. I know that feeling. But I didn't tell her about the wedding yet, or what I was planning to do there. That was still forming, like a thunderhead building on the edge of a horizon. It began with a phone call. Not to Danielle, not to Mom, to Sophie. I waited a week after receiving her invitation, and then I dialed her number. She answered on the second ring, breathless and excited. Uncle Hunter? I smiled. Hey, kiddo. Oh my God, thank you for saying yes. I was scared you'd. I don't know. I didn't know if I should even send the invite. I'm glad you did, I said, meaning it. We talked for over an hour. Not about the drama. Not about the Lakehouse or the party or Danielle's campaign of half-truths. Just about her life. Her fiancé. Her plans. The small ceremony she wanted by the lake. Not our Lakehouse, obviously, but a venue outside town. Intimate. Calm. The kind of wedding she'd always dreamed of. She didn't bring up her mom until the very end. I know it's going to be tense, she said softly. With her. With everyone. I'll handle it, I replied. You don't worry about that. Your job is to enjoy your day. She hesitated. Can I ask you something kind of weird? Go for it. Can I visit the lake house? Before the wedding. I blinked. You want to? I know it's not mine. I know there's history. But I miss it. I haven't been there since I was a kid. Not since Dad fixed the roof that summer you taught me how to skip stones. That summer had been one of the few times Danielle and Ryan had shown up for more than a day. Sophie must have been around 10. I remember showing her how to crouch low, how to flick her wrist. She'd gotten the hang of it on her 4th try, then beamed like she'd just discovered a superpower. Yeah, I said. Of course. Anytime you want. So she came. Alone. We spent the day walking the trails, eating sandwiches on the porch, sipping lemonade as the sun dropped behind the trees. She cried when she saw the swing I'd restored, the one her dad used to push her on when she was small. I don't know what Mom told everyone, she said eventually. But I know she's been trying to twist this. Make it seem like you're the villain. I didn't answer that. I didn't need to. Sophie just shook her head. I hate that you've been so cut out. You were always there for me, even when she and Dad were off doing whatever. You were solid. Thanks, I said. That means more than you know. Then, slowly, the idea began to take shape. Because Sophie deserved more than awkward glances and quiet apologies on her wedding day. She deserved something unforgettable, something honest. And I had just the thing. I spent the next few weeks quietly preparing. Not revenge, exactly. Not in the way Danielle or Mom would have expected. I was setting the record straight and giving Sophie something no one else could. I called James again. Yes, that James. He'd become something of a legend in my family lore after the party incident. I half expected him to be busy, but he picked up on the first ring. Let me guess, he said dryly. Another banquet hall. Another microphone. I laughed. Nothing so dramatic this time. Just need some advice. What's up? I want to gift someone partial ownership of a property. There was a pause. The lake house. Yep. To whom? My niece. Sophie. That's bold. She's the only one who's never treated me like a placeholder. She deserves a part of this. He whistled low. You're serious? As a heart attack. He went quiet for a moment. Then, all right. Let's do it properly. We drafted the documents. I had a plaque made, brushed metal, simple engraving. It read, Callahan Lakehouse. Established 1962. Passed with honor, 2023. Hunter and Sophie. The night before the wedding, I had the documents signed and notarized. Everything was legal. Solid. I kept it all in a small wooden box. Plaque, paperwork, a set of keys with a navy blue leather tag I had monogrammed with her initials. It wasn't flashy, but it was real, and it carried weight. The morning of the wedding, I ironed my shirt 3 times. I wore a tie that had belonged to my father, navy with subtle gray stripes. Simple, understated, strong. I arrived just before the ceremony, quietly taking my place in the back. Danielle spotted me almost immediately. She was in a long lilac dress, her hair in an elaborate updo. The moment our eyes met, I saw the flicker, annoyance, discomfort, the realization that I had not only shown up, but looked completely unfazed. She approached during the reception, plastic smile in place. I was surprised to see you, she said, sipping from her wine glass. You shouldn't be, I replied evenly. I was invited. Still, she said. Given everything that's happened, I thought you'd have the grace to keep your distance. I raised an eyebrow. Grace, huh? Is that what we're calling it now? She sighed, already bored of pretending. Let's just not cause a scene today. For Sophie's sake. I smiled. Agreed. She walked away before I could say more. Probably for the best, because I had no intention of causing a scene. But the moment was coming, and it would echo longer than anything I could say into a microphone. When the toasts were over and the cake was cut, I waited until Sophie had changed out of her wedding dress and was sitting with her husband, laughing about something the best man had said. The light outside was golden, soft. Everything felt suspended. I approached her table and crouched beside her. Hey, I said. Got a minute? Of course, she said, standing. I led her outside, down a short path near the water, where guests had started gathering in little clusters to talk and unwind. I found a quiet spot behind the venue, near a low bench, shaded by tall grass and pines. I have something for you, I said, reaching into my jacket and pulling out the wooden box. She looked surprised. Uncle Hunter, you didn't have to. I know, but I wanted to, and I want you to open it here. Alone. She slowly lifted the lid. She looked at the plaque first. Her fingers traced the engraving, her eyes softening. Then the keys. Then the papers. I watched as realization dawned. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. I added you as co-owner, I said gently, of the Lakehouse. It's not just mine anymore. It's yours too. Her hands trembled. I don't understand. Why? Why would you? Because you've always seen me. Treated me like I mattered. That house is more than just walls and windows. It's memory, and I want you to be part of it. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She didn't even try to stop them. This is the greatest gift anyone has ever given me, she whispered. I know it won't fix everything, I said, but maybe it's the start of something better. She hugged me then, tight, fierce, real. The kind of hug that says I see you. I choose you, no matter what they say. We stayed there a while, and when we walked back toward the venue together, hand in hand, I saw Danielle watching from a distance. Her smile was gone. She looked like someone trying to solve a puzzle without all the pieces. And she had no idea what was coming next, because her grip on the family story was slipping, and I wasn't finished. Not yet, because she'd been keeping secrets, too. Big ones. And I had just uncovered the first. But that part, that's for later. Wait until you hear what I found in her husband's business records, and how the Lakehouse was just the beginning. It happened quietly at first. No dramatic confrontation. No angry outbursts. Just a few lines buried in an accounting report, followed by a call to James. I hadn't planned to go digging. After gifting Sophie part ownership of the Lakehouse, I honestly thought I was done. I felt lighter after the wedding, freer. I thought maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. I'd shown them I wasn't someone to push around. I'd claimed my legacy and passed it on to someone who deserved it. That should have been the end. But then Lisa, my cousin, the one who'd always been in my corner, sent me a screenshot. It was a post from Danielle's Facebook, one I hadn't seen because I was blocked, naturally. It was a photo of Danielle and Ryan standing in front of a sign that read, "Coming soon, Lakeview Retreat, family-focused, luxury getaways." Danielle's caption gushed about honoring our family legacy and creating a magical experience for generations to come. She even included a wink about keeping it in the family, where it belongs. They were turning it into a business. My family's Lakehouse, our grandfather's dream, my father's legacy, the place I bled into for years, was being used to market a fake story built on entitlement and lies. Except it wasn't my Lakehouse they were standing in front of. It was a second property, one I'd never seen before. James and I started pulling threads. Ryan's name showed up on a few property deeds in the area, but the LLC attached to them? That was where things got interesting. Baypine Ventures LLC, registered 6 months prior. It was Danielle's name on the filing, and Mom's as a silent partner. That was the moment everything clicked. The push for the Lakehouse. The sudden desperation for me to sign it over quietly. The guilt trips. The birthday party. They didn't just want it for family memories. They wanted it because they planned to use it as the flagship property in a chain of boutique vacation homes. And when I didn't cave, they tried to replicate it. Same design, same layout, even sourcing similar wood for the deck. But without the actual house, without the history, they had to spin a story around it. A fake narrative where they were passing down traditions, conveniently erasing me from it entirely. and they were using Mom's retirement money to fund it. James laid out our options. "Do you want to make this public?" he asked. "No," I said. "I want to make it impossible." The plan we built was surgical. We started with a quiet call to the county zoning office. Bay Pine Ventures had filed for a special use permit to run short-term rentals on the property. They hadn't realized that a nearby homeowner association had strict limitations on commercial activity. James filed a formal complaint, citing zoning violations, and flagged inconsistencies in the original permit application. Then we went to the bank. Mom's retirement account had been used as collateral for one of Bay Pine's startup loans. I knew this because I finally had a long overdue conversation with her, not to reconcile, but to ask some hard questions. She looked tired when I visited. Not angry, not combative, just old. Like the last few months had taken more from her than she'd expected. She poured tea. We sat in silence for a long time. Then I asked her, point blank, "Did you give Danielle access to your accounts?" She didn't answer right away, just looked into her cup. "She said it was a smart investment," Mom finally murmured. "That we'd build something meaningful. That your father would have wanted that." I said nothing. Because the truth was, I didn't think Dad would have wanted any of this. He wouldn't have wanted his wife coerced into funding a vanity project. He wouldn't have wanted his son cut out in silence. And he wouldn't have wanted his daughter building an empire on stolen nostalgia. So I gave Mom a choice. "I can fight this quietly," I told her. "We can stop it without dragging you through the mud. But I need you to stay out of it from now on. No more bankrolling Danielle's schemes. No more pretending she's the only one who matters." She nodded. No protest. No denial. Just that same tired look. The permits were revoked within a month. The zoning board denied their appeal. Danielle tried to shift to another county, but her reputation had already spread. Several neighbors had seen the Lakeview retreat posts and began organizing complaints. Their launch was dead in the water. But that wasn't the end. Because the final blow didn't come from me. It came from Sophie. See, Sophie hadn't just appreciated my wedding gift. She'd grown protective of it. She started spending weekends at the Lakehouse with her husband, restoring some of the old charm, repainting the guest room, even planting a small garden along the fence line. She took pride in it, loved it the way I did, respected it. And one night, she caught her mom snooping around the property. I was out of town, but Sophie called me immediately. She was taking pictures, she said. Probably for marketing. I told her to leave, but she just kept saying, "This should have been mine." Like she couldn't believe it. So I gave Sophie full authority to press charges if Danielle trespassed again. James drafted a notice. It was hand-delivered to Danielle's front door the following week. She didn't come back, but she didn't disappear either. Danielle, true to form, tried to pivot. She began spreading rumors, telling extended family I'd manipulated Mom into rewriting the will, that I'd bought off Sophie with false promises. She even hinted that I'd forged documents to claim the Lakehouse. That was the last straw. James and I prepared a full documentation packet. Every deed, every date, every email. I printed physical copies and mailed them, in glossy folders, to every close relative she'd whispered to. No commentary, no anger, just facts. Then I made one final post online. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't vengeful. Just a photo of the lake at sunset. Caption: "Some things aren't inherited. They're earned." It went viral among our family circles. Got shared by cousins. Commented on by old friends. Even Mom liked the post. Danielle? She deleted her Facebook for 3 months. Ryan tried to salvage Bay Pine Ventures with a new location 2 states over. But the buzz had died. Investors pulled out. The retreat dream fizzled into dust. Last I heard, they sold their second house at a loss. Mom moved into a quiet condo not far from the town center. We're not close. Not like we used to be, but she's been better. Calmer. Sometimes she sends Sophie photos from old albums. Sometimes she even includes one of me. And as for me, I kept working on the Lakehouse. Finished building a second dock. Added a fire pit. Hosted my first artist residency. 3 painters, 2 writers, and a cellist who practiced at dawn as fog curled off the water. Sophie visits often. We sit on the porch, sipping coffee, listening to the world go still. She jokes about naming the swing. I tell her to pick something strong and quiet, like the storm we survived. We don't talk much about Danielle anymore. But sometimes, when the wind rustles through the trees just right, I can almost hear the old echoes of entitlement fading into the woods, replaced by something steadier, something earned. Something real. And that's the end of it. That's how I lost my family, reclaimed my name, and passed on the only legacy that ever mattered. Not through blood, not through guilt, but through quiet, patient power. The kind you can't steal, the kind you build. And when I finally locked the front door that night, stepping out into the crisp autumn air, I smiled. Because for the first time in years, I didn't owe anyone an explanation. I just belonged. Final line. Let them fight over what they think they deserve. I already built what I needed.